Hello, Astrotometry. Fractal Infinity's just posted a really good comment question on the latest vlog, and I wanted to try to knock it out real quick. He says, why is it that sometimes you predict a 4 to 5 day and other times a 7 to 8 day delay in the effects seen on the Earth from solar activity? That's a very good question. And I could give you the conventional solar physics. I'm going to go ahead and give you the conventional solar physics explanation. I'm going to go ahead and ignore hypertime for this explanation because I can do that. Because the understanding in astrotometry with hypertime is consistent with the three-dimensional physics. And so I'm going to go ahead and give you that. There's two phenomena. There's the coronal hole and there's the coronal mass ejection. The coronal mass ejection is a much higher energy. And so it's an ejection from the sun. The particles are traveling much faster. And depending on the trajectory, depending on whether they come off of the limb or whether they come right at us, it takes a lot different time because they move in a curve in astrotometry and in conventional physics. It's understood that there is a curvature to the path that they take, and so if it's coming directly at us, there's less of a curvature, so it takes less time. The coronal hole is supposedly a gas emission. Now this isn't the theory that I don't really subscribe to this, but this is the modern theory, is that there's a gas that escapes from the sun that travels to the Earth that causes the geomagnetic disturbance that is seen on the Earth. Now, the amount of time that it takes to get here really depends on the depth of the hole. It depends on it depends on again, it depends on whether it's over at the limb, and it depends on the size of the hole. It also depends on, in astrotometry, the hypersymmetric seismic activity either comes at the beginning of the geomagnetic activity or at the end of the geomagnetic activity, one or the other. Because in astrotometry, it's understood that the earthquake is the beginning and the end, technically, in time space of that disturbance. So you have the earthquake that either is the cause of or the reaction to that same sort of thing. In other words, it's the same energy, just organized in time in a different way. So there's a cycle, and depending on where we are in that cycle, when I do the actual log, I have to change the date. I have to change the timing. This one I did sooner. This coronal hole is still in the process of forming. So when I first started doing this, I got criticized for waiting till the last minute, basically, to put up a log about it. And one of my logs, the earthquake happened just the day after, and I'd waited until the hole was actually closing up before I made the log. And I knew that the storm was on its way. This one, that hole is still growing. That hole is still getting bigger. And so I'm kind of putting it out there earlier. Now, if it comes at the beginning of the storm, though, it could be within 3 days, or two days probably, depending on whether the 2 days because it's facing the Earth, 2 days because this hole is directly in front of the Earth. And so I'm kind of going through the process. So it could be as soon as 2 days, might be as late as 9 days, depending on how long it takes that hole to start collapsing, because that's really the indication of how big the earthquake is. Because if it's a really big earthquake, the hole is going to take longer to grow and it's going to take longer to shrink. And so that's the way that I'm looking at this. And it's not simple stuff. It's not something that we have existing models for, and it has to do with the cyclical nature of time-space.